Welcome back, everyone, to Behind the Numbers. I love this show because Turkish and I only ever do it, every 4 to 6 months or so, whenever it's needed. And whenever there's big talking topics around Arsenal that we want to go into the deeper numbers, probably like a deeper dive than we even do on Tactical Insight, to be fair, into what's being said about Arsenal. Today's topic, I'm going to be pitching to you why I'm trying to destroy the myth that Arsenal are boring. Okay. People have been very critical of our style of play. People have been putting out nonsense stats and saying things, questioning whether Arsenal are going in a direction that actually wins you titles. And I'm going to try and put that to bed a little bit. You've had a glance at the numbers, but I'm going to try and make my case. Before we go into it all, you've been on record on Forever Arsenal, which we do, of course, with Lee and Jordan, saying that style of play doesn't bother you that much. So just before we go into this all, I do want to just kind of get an idea. If 0 is you don't care at all, and 100 is you want us to win the league playing, tiki-taka, where are you on the scale in terms of how much it matters to you the way we play and how much you kind of identify with that when it comes to being an Arsenal fan?
And you're asking me this with the knowledge that we win the league either way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Fine, right.
If we're winning the league,
yeah.
I'm not going to care about how we do it, whether we do it with a 15-goal conceded season or whether we do it with a 100-plus goals scored season.
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't really matter. Great sides have culminated from both statistics in the past.
Yeah.
So for me, listen, during that Chelsea reign when they essentially took over London, with the Roman Abramovich era and whatnot, one of the big things I used to say about them was they're boring.
Yeah.
But looking back now, it was because they were so good. I don't care if we're boring. I don't care if we're exciting. I want us to win major trophies. So however we do it, we do it.
You framed that question brilliantly because on that front, I agree. If, though, we have what we've had the last few seasons, finishing second, do things like style of play come in a little bit where you can maybe appreciate you're enjoying the football, we're scoring lots of goals, or you're seeing a numerical improvement in some way? Does that kind of stuff start to matter when you're just falling short? You look at that kind of stuff, or again, not so much?
I think for a couple of years you can let it slide, but in the third year, the fourth year of expectation, you expect those fine lines to be amended, so we finally do get over the line and not finish second and finish first.
Yeah.
But obviously numbers matter as well. And we're going up against the juggernaut year in year out in Man City, so we could score more goals, we could concede less goals, and we could still fall just behind Manchester City. Is that acceptable? No, in my opinion, not now. But once we delve into the numbers, I've got a couple of questions for you as well off the back of it. So I'll be interested to know what you think.
I'm looking forward to going into these a lot. Let's just give everyone a little bit of the context, which you'll all know, but just a reminder that I think the reason there's this feeling around Arsenal is 10 men against Brighton at home. We were very defensive to try see out a point from 1-0 up, which was, I guess, disappointing. We had some chances, but you couldn't acknowledge the context. We then had big games like Tottenham away, Atalanta away, Man City away, of course the PSG game. This is all looking at the Premier League, these numbers, but the context of those Champions League games matter too. Arsenal have been quite direct in those games. Arsenal have had to, deal with Rice missing the North London derby, Marino missing some football, Odegaard being out this whole time, so maybe tweak their style of football a little bit, been a little bit more 4-4-2. And so there have been a lot of questions about Arsenal's style of play and what they're trying to do. People have actually been critical of, whether we've been too boring. Should we have gone maybe for a 5-3-1 against City rather than a 5-4, trying to see out the results? So all those questions came up, hence why as we go into this game against Bournemouth on the weekend, as we go into another stint of actually quite difficult games coming up, I wanted to address this. So let's go into the numbers. Let's not keep you waiting. We're going to start with a very generic look at our Premier League rank for some key attacking stats. Now, let's just get the kind of quick, obvious ones out the way, right? Which is that in terms of our XG, we rank 5th at 12.8 XG accumulated over the 7 games we've played so far. 15 goals we've scored, that ranks us 3rd, with 114 shots ranking us 4th. Again, that's a pretty good start for supposedly a boring team, right? 5th, 4th and 3rd in terms of goals. Not bad.
Yeah, especially when you consider the injury to Odegaard. And I'm going to throw in there, consider the fact we didn't get, I think, 95% of the fan base wanted an attack.
Yes.
This summer in the window. Point. So, yeah, the numbers are still quite strong. 2 games where we've played, 45, 50 minutes with 10 men against class opposition in both City and Brighton.
Yep.
I think the numbers will be skewed a bit off the back of that. So,
absolutely.
5th is still very strong in XG, 3rd in goals, 4th in shots. It's still,
Yep.
very strong.
Still looking pretty good. Now, this is where I guess it's a bit interesting. At 3,152 attempted passes, Arsenal ranked 14th. Again, this is where maybe the context of everything else is going into it. Now, the completed passes is still at 82.3%, which rank us 9th. But then, with less passes completed, with less attempted passes, we still rank 4th for 202 shot-creating actions, which are going to look at goals and shots. All that stuff looks quite good. Again, is this leaning into Arsenal being a little bit more direct and Arsenal finding a way to be a little bit more effective without having the ball all the time?
Yeah, I think we've seen that towards the back end of last season as well, where Arteta relieved possession, let's say, in the game, but we've still come out with points. I think Tottenham was the big example of that in the back end of last season, where surprisingly they dominated possession, but in all other metrics we got the job done. So. Yeah, I mean, we could see it coming. And for me, I'm glad. Listen, year on year, you've got to improve somehow.
Yeah,
in my opinion, we've improved in the quality overall of the squad, but in attack, we didn't get the necessary improvements, in my opinion. But what Arteta can do on his end, and he's shown to be great at it over the last couple of seasons, he can make tweaks that can not confuse the opposition, but give them something new to think about. And you look at when Jesus came in, we was free flowing, we was easy on the eye, we was, very exciting team. Then last season came, we become a bit more structured. There was patterns of play that was, Havertz didn't find his role in midfield, but then he goes up front and, we make that work. And I think that kind of falls in line with what you just said about going more direct. When you've got a player like Havertz up top, you have that ability. And you look throughout the last 2-3 seasons in the squad, we've got big men in there in terms of height, demeanour and aura on the pitch. So I think it works hand in hand with what he's doing. And listen, Arteta's done it 2 years in a row where he's built something that's essentially taken us to game week 35, game week 38. This time round, he's done it again. And like last season, I don't expect to see the best of it until maybe going into December. So I still think it's very early to be assessing and making judgment of stats. But opposition fans, all it takes is one game or one missed time tackle by Saliba in international break for people to be tweeting Real Madrid saying, "Are you sure you really want him?" Don't want him. It's fine. Please. One moment or one statistic doesn't change the facts. And the facts that Arsenal have been challenging for a league title 2 years in a row. The facts that everyone expects us to challenge again, opposition or not. And Arteta's tweaked something. And I don't care if it's boring. I don't care if it's exciting. What I care about is points on the board and taking this title off City.
Totally agree. And more stats only prove kind of what we're talking about here. Our touches in the defensive third, which is interesting because we're known as a team that can build up really well from the defensive third, out the back, from goalkeeper to centre-back through to midfield. We actually rank last, 20th in the Premier League for touches in the defensive third, which is so interesting. Which is also interesting, I imagine when you're defending, that tallies as a touch as well, but maybe it means touches in which you're control of the ball. But very interesting, touches in the middle third again at 16th, yet touches in the attacking third up to third, with the exact amount of touches we've had in the attacking third as we've had in the middle third at 1,549. Really interesting. Our tackles in the attacking third also up there. So it feels like what Arsenal are trying to do is be more effective in that final third, whether it be winning the ball high up the pitch, making sure that we're actually suffocating teams when we're in that area, and actually doing a little bit less in build-up, doing a little bit less in terms of controlling the ball in the middle parts of the pitch. Maybe trying to be a little bit more efficient here.
Yeah, the numbers are... These numbers, you fed me the numbers prior to going live. These numbers surprised me the most because to be third in passes or touches in the attacking third and last in touches in the defensive third, it kind of goes against people's argument that we are boring. Because, boring teams tend to pass it around the back. Boring teams tend to go from defence to midfield, waiting for their opportunity. And I think I'm not calling Man City boring, but when we go further into the stats and you see how direct they are in comparison, I think we're doing what we need to do and how we need to do it.
I think you're right to point that out. Now, this came out from the Athletics, a really interesting graphic that it basically it measures passes per sequence for teams and direct speed of attack for teams. So what you've got is Man City on one end, who are less direct, high possession at Arsenal, because I've tracked this last season. Arsenal much closer to City last season. Everton, on the other hand, are more direct, low possession. I mean, that defines a Sean Dyche team, right? But look at Arsenal next to Fulham, almost bang in the middle. Now, again, the context of all these other games play a part, but the stats that we've looked at there almost are summed up by this graphic. It all kind of makes a lot of sense, which is interesting. Again, Arsenal may be evolving into showing different sides to their game. And I looked into some deeper stats around this, which are interesting. Now, what I did was look at our goalkeepers' kicking stats from last season compared to this season. I also did this in another video, but just building on it a little bit, I think it's really interesting because you can see that the attempted launched passes from David Raya last season at 11.60 has gone up to 16.14 this season, ranking us 5th in the Premier League this campaign. Our percentage of launched goal kicks and our average length of goal kicks is also ranking first, which means that we are going longer more than most, and we are covering more yards than most when it comes to our goal kicks. But if you compare those exact same stats to Leicester and Southampton, games where we're expected to be on the ball a little bit more, you remove the context of all those difficult away games, again, at home, those numbers dip, which makes me think that this is, again, more Arteta saying, we are able to do something for particular situations. And what's his famous quote he's been saying a lot this season? Win in any context.
Yep.
Whereas, for Leicester and Southampton, it required something that was a lot more the Arsenal we know, and we still racked up lots of shots, scored 7 goals in those games. So Arsenal maybe are just able to flip from one style to another and adapt to what they need to do.
And listen, we've only seen one manager beat Pep over a 38-game season, aside from Conte in the first year, which I'll put down to first year. We've only seen one team do it in their way.
Yeah.
In their style. Klopp had his style. It was very different to Pep's style, and it paid dividends that season. Arteta's been accused of being mini Pep over the years.
Yeah.
I think that's so far away from the truth at this moment in time. Maybe a couple of years ago, okay, there's some element of truth in that. The 4 centre backs, even though the first time we've seen that was Liverpool, with Tomiyasu up against Salah. It would be very hard to take a title off Pep playing the Pep way.
Yeah, totally.
So I think Arteta. Listen, on one hand, I get the argument that he's 4 or 5 years in now and he's got to do it. I agree with that. On the other hand, he's still learning. 5 years into any role, you would be arrogant to think you know it all in any role. Operation manager, Marks and Spencer, 5 years and you don't know it all.
Yeah.
So I think what Arteta has done over the last 18 months from the start of last season, so just over 12 months, is think about something different. And what we've seen come out of it is our ability to be flexible in our approach. And I think that throws an element of surprise. I think teams have been used to us playing out the back, and their approach probably in that is try press up high and stop them playing. But now, if you look at our stats, we're going over not just the defence in large chunks, the midfield too.
Yeah. And
trying to start off play from the final third, using Raya's great, ball playing ability. So I just think, at the end of the day, the way we're setting up now is testament again to Arteta's abilities as a coach. Because we've still got racking points on the board. We've gone away to Villa, away to Tottenham, away to City, without key players.
Yeah.
I know City didn't have a key player or two in theirs as well, and I forgot about Tottenham and Villa and whatnot, their situations. But it's all difficult places to go. So Arteta's found a way to be flexible in his approach, throw the element of surprise against some teams, and I think the more we go into the season, the more teams might be confused in how we're going to set up against them, and that could work in our favour, because again, I feel like we have left ourselves light in terms of squad, but in terms of manager, I still think Arteta's the second best manager in this league. I know Emery's the second best in terms of trophies and experience and whatnot. And if we're talking that, there's no argument. But if we're talking building a team that's going toe-to-toe with Manchester City, Arteta's done it pretty much 2 years in a row now. He's got to get it done this year, but I've got confidence that he can get it done.
Do you think in the way that we talk about De Bruyne being unpredictable, whether it's a through ball in behind or putting it into the top corner from 25 yards, or Foden's got that ability. We talk about City having match winners and different ways of scoring a goal, because they can be direct with Haaland, they can pick you apart and whatever it might be. Do you think that Arteta, from a managerial perspective, I think we have some top players, and I would put 2 or 3 of them in the world-class bracket. But I'm talking match winners and difference makers. Do you think Arteta is our biggest difference maker, and this unpredictability in tactics and a way to approach a game is almost his throwing something different at the opposition as opposed to De Bruyne? Now, this is not me saying Guardiola is a tactical master and still the best manager of all time, in my opinion, with Ferguson. So I'm not for 1 second. But do you think Arteta's thinking, I have to be better than Pep tactically more than thinking about it being the players doing it for him. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to put down Pep, because obviously Pep's tactics, he's not just, De Bruyne do it for me. That's not for 1 second what I'm trying to say. But I'm just wondering whether Arteta's looking at it from that tunnel more than the other.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying here. I think when we look at Pep, we know he's a genius. We know he's one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. But he's got killers in his side. I don't think we've got killers.
Agreed. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think the closest player we got to a killer is probably Saliba, which, in attack, I think Saka's probably the closest, but you can't put Saka with De Bruyne or a Haaland. Sure. They're more one shot, one kill, and they're assassins. But they're, in terms of De Bruyne, we're talking about not just an assassin. He's much more than that. Whereas we don't have that. So maybe Arteta's looking at it and saying, all right, we don't have that, but what we do have is the element of surprise. I know these players can set up this way. I know they can set up that way. I know they can do this at this moment in the game. I know they can manage the game better than they ever have in the last 3-4 years. So maybe he's leaning more towards that. And to be honest, Arteta's a great man manager. Yeah. He's got key players to sign contracts at this club, something that Wenger struggled to do a lot towards the back end of his career. He's turned around that narrative, Mikel. He's created a harmonious dressing room. So I think he leans on that ability that he's seen. I don't know. I think the difference with him and Pep is a lot more ruthless. But Pep has the experience and trophies to be that ruthless. Whereas Mikel is still very much a baby as a manager. Sure. So I think he has to toe the line on how ruthless he is, even though he's shown it in the past. So he's more so used the arm over the shoulder, let's do this together approach, and it's worked so far, and with elements of ruthlessness in it. Yeah. So I think they are very different managers. I mean, you can see a bit of Pep in Mikel, but you can see Mikel's taken that bit of Pep, he's taken a bit of Moyes, and probably taken a bit of Wenger as well, and this is what we see now. So Arteta's going to have to do, we don't have killers like Man City do. But killers come with territory, and the territory is they've won 4 in 4. And De Bruyne and Haaland have been key to that, let alone some of the other players they have. We don't have those players. Yeah. But we start winning titles, they will grow to killers in this side.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if we are to win the Premier League, Arteta has to have been a better manager that season than Guardiola. Yeah. And we're not talking all time. If we are to win the league, he has to have outperformed Pep Guardiola. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say, and is he aiming for that? And I think you've summed up perfectly there with sort of talking about the killers Man City have. Let's talk about, though, again, I want to keep dispelling this myth that we're boring. Now, I looked at our home games. Man City and Arsenal played 4 home games. Liverpool played 4 away games, so 3 home games. It's kind of crazy to think that only 3 away games have been Villa, Tottenham and City. But more on that in a sec. Now, at home, I want to show you this stats, which are our attacking stats per game for Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal. I'm looking at goals, points, shots and possession all per game. Now, what I find really interesting about this is you would think that Arsenal have struggled to really get going from an attacking perspective, but apart from goals per game, where Man City rank at 2.75, Arsenal at 2.5, Liverpool at 1.67, of course that blank they drew against Nottingham Forest and their defeat will sort of be a stain on what's actually been quite a very good start for them. You look at the points per game, City at 2.5, Liverpool 2, Arsenal at 2.5 with 3 wins and a draw in their 4 games at home. This is where it gets interesting though. Shots per game, 21.3 for City, 17.3 for Liverpool in their 3 games, and Arsenal at 23.3 above both of them, but with less possession at 55.5% to City's 66.7 and Liverpool's 64. I'm just trying to, I know eye test is one thing, and I want to end the show on the eye test because I always think that should drive things first. But I just never understood this narrative that we're boring, and some of these numbers are backing a little bit of what I've been seeing, that we're not struggling to turn it on when we need to and actually suffocate teams with plenty of shots and goals and results at home.
Yeah, I think are we boring? I'd say no. That would be my answer to that. Do I understand what people are saying by calling us boring? Yes, but I think they're mistaking us being boring to us maybe not having the final piece of the jigsaw and having to work around that. Sure. All the stats that you read out so far kind of, we play in the attacking third much more than we did last season. We're looking to get the ball to the attacking third a lot quicker than we did last season with Raya over the top and so on. So all these facts that you're showing me doesn't fall into we are boring or we've turned boring all of a sudden. That surely shows that we are trying to go on the front foot a lot more than we did last season, even though we was doing that pretty much week in, week out. So I just think it's a case of a missing piece more than anything. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, Liverpool, the argument is they haven't had as tough a run as Arsenal and City have, and they're top of the table, but in the next few weeks we'll find out how serious they are. Points per game, pretty good, pretty solid when you consider, all right, our away form this season has been good, but the home form we've kind of doubted at times, but still very strong in comparison. Possession.
It's because of the nature, sorry to cut, it's because of the nature of that Leicester and Southampton game. 1-0 behind at Southampton, 92 minutes on the clock, we're drawing with Leicester. And what it can do, because of the nature of how we won those games, it can almost cloud what ultimately were good enough performances to win those games anyway.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Obviously, people might look at, it's 2-2 in the 65th minute, or it's 1-0 to Southampton in the 60th minute. But the reality is the stats back up the improvements Arsenal have made. But I also think that the lack of reinforcements in attack have led to what people are now labelling boring or unsustainable or whatever it is. I can't lie, I've learned a lot from the stats you've shown me now, because that attacking third stat is quite eye-opening.
I know it is. I think
for us to be launching the ball long a lot more when the whole philosophy of Mikel was meant to be playing out of the back and get and keep it, and all of this stuff. It's interesting. I like it because it's throwing a wild card in there, and that's what we've got to do. Again, I lean back to when you don't have killers like the opposition, you've got to have something up there. Yeah. So I like what Arteta's doing. I like that it's showing in the statistics. I just think either it clicks some more in attack, and then someone does become that killer, because Havertz's goal against Southampton. Yeah. If you're describing, when I say killer, I mean that goal.
Yeah.
If we can get that goal from a Havertz or a player in our side 10, 11 times a season, when it doesn't look like he's got a shot on, or it doesn't look like he's favoured to get a shot on target even, but it rattles in off a post and goes in, that's a killer. Yeah. If we can get more of them, then cool. The argument in comparison to City, would be a lot closer in believing that killer for killer we can go for it, but we can't. That's the reality until we see more of it. So tactically, we've got to do what we've got to do, and listen, the game's come a long way in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm a passion merchant, as they like to call it, but it's always nice to see statistics backing up that. Yeah. People might call us boring. I don't care. Chelsea were boring during their heyday, but guess what? Chelsea were great and created history during their heyday. Not the only side. I don't mind if we do it again. In fact, I'd probably like doing it again. Let's not forget, I come from an era that just came off the back of 1-0 to the Arsenal, and we had great defences. We conceded 16, I think it was one season. Don't quote me, and it might be 18, but we conceded a low amount of goals. So Arsenal, don't just think Arsenal are Arsene Wenger. We also had eras where it was, we loved that teams couldn't score against us. We loved that 1-0 to the Arsenal. We was confident that we're going to get 3 points. I don't mind winning it like that either. So, and
the more it, forgive me for the phrase, but boils people's piss.
Oh, I love it.
The more I want to see us actually win that way.
Love it. You see, when Jordan on Forever said, I'll take 1-0 all the way for the rest of the season.
I hear it. How sustainable it is to winning a title is a big question, but I'd love it. Listen, let's have a little look at our away form as well, because interesting to touch on the home form there. But I'm going to show you some back-to-back graphics here. Now, what we've got here is a little screenshot from Understat, big up Understat, with fantastic, collection of XG numbers. Now, it does, it can read differently to XG philosophy, so bear with me. But with Understat, the way they measure it, they have Arsenal as having a better XG away at Villa in a 2-0 win, at home to Brighton, despite the 10 men for pretty much all the second half, and away at Tottenham, despite being on the back foot for a lot of that game or protecting our goal a lot. Now they have us at a lower XG than Man City away from home. Now we can understand in the context of the second half, but here from the XG philosophy we can see that despite Arsenal again under their numbers, ending with a significantly lower XG than Man City, by half-time when we were 2-1 up, we had a 0.94 above City's 0.91 with 11v11. For context, Man City accumulated 0.2 XG in the full 90 away at Newcastle, which shows how well Arsenal actually did in that first half, and that away from home, we take all that into context, we're still able to create chances. Yep. This idea that we just sit back and defend, we're creating better quality accumulation of chances than the teams that we're supposedly getting battered by.
Yeah. like Brighton. I mean, I'm not surprised by the XG in second half because we should have won that game.
Yeah, with this Havertz, Saka,
and
yeah.
Saka back to back.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of XG numbers, I'm putting 0.7 on both of those.
Yeah.
At the bare
Yeah.
minimum. So I mean, that and Man City is different. You go 10 men against Man City at the Etihad. I mean, I don't expect to have another chance. We might get one off a set piece or something, but the expectation is we've got to, buckle up. We've got all hands on deck, and we've got to try get the 3 points or try get the point out of it. So even when I look at the City one, I didn't expect to have more XG, but you highlighted half time, and that's a good measure of it because that 45 minutes was a fair reflection. 11 on 11.
Yeah.
City take the lead. What do Arsenal do? We go into half time 2-1 up with 10 men, unfortunately, but the rest is history. So I think XG wise, and all these statistics so far falling into my feeling, I won't say argument, my feeling that we are lacking a piece in the final third.
Sure.
Because, if the passes are going to the final third quicker than ever, our XG is still as good as the competition in terms of City and Liverpool around us, even though we've been away to tough sides, even though we've had 10 men for two of those tough games. I think it bodes very well. But I do think that one piece might come in, whether it's January or next summer. And if it's next summer, don't talk to me about that yet because there's still this season to go. But that final piece could be the real needle changer. I don't know if that the word, if that's the phrase, but the needle mover.
Yeah, needle mover. Yeah,
because I just feel like you get that right person into that attack with all the numbers around, then we will go on to win many things, not just the one that we're craving for now, because it's not just one that we rest on. One will feel great, we deserve it, we need it. But what I feel like Arteta's building here is a team that not only gets 1, 2, 3, 4 and starts building a collection over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, man, wouldn't it be amazing? Let's see how Arsenal are doing on course to trying to achieve that big Premier League title by comparing. We do this every behind the numbers because I think it's fascinating comparing how we're doing this season's results compared to the equivalent game last season. Are we better off? And as you can see immediately at the bottom, we are 1 point better off. Now, I think the big difference is despite drawing at home to Brighton this season where we beat them 2-0 last season, it's that win at Villa Park, having lost there, that gave us an extra 3 points despite the 2 dropped against Brighton. Everything else is matched. Fascinatingly, we've actually scored more goals from these games, 15 compared to the 12 last season against Burnley and Luton. Burnley, like Leicester, were the championship winners. Luton, like Southampton, were the playoff winners. Hence, using their fixtures as the equivalent. We've conceded 1 goal more, though, this season in the equivalent fixtures. So again, all bodes pretty well.
Yeah, it bodes pretty well. And you consider, again, Odegaard out.
Yeah.
We left ourselves light in that position, and he's had to, one day put Havertz there, put Jesus up top, put Trossard there a couple of times. Had to bring Ranieri off the bench. It's not ideal circumstances. So for the numbers and before to match up so well, and then the year-on-year results against like for like or similar opposition, again, it's looking good. Odegaard, November, touted as a return. Forget me talking about a new signing for a sec, which I do, quite often. Odegaard coming back into what we're producing now could be that needle mover. It could be that difference between why we go straight to the attacking third now and why we don't build up as much, because maybe we don't have enough with Mourinho out as well. I mean, who expects us to be, dominating possession with Partey, Rice and Jorginho playing? Even Trossard in there in the number 10, it's not his usual position for us. So what we've had to do in midfield, is make it work. But what we've had to do on the pitch is also make the midfield that we're making work by bypassing them more often than we ever did with Odegaard there.
Yeah, very true.
So I like the flexibility that Arteta's showing.
I do too. And look, all this, everyone, this was my case for are Arsenal boring? This is what I was trying to destroy the myth. And ultimately, I always say, it's like my saying, right? Judge with your eyes and then see if the stats back it. Don't just judge a team by its stats. So if you felt that Arsenal weren't really exciting you that much, and now you've watched this video, now you're feeling differently, I don't think you should. That's not really the point. I felt always that Arsenal were playing good football, that I was happy with the way we approached away games, and I was very happy with how Arteta and Arsenal had approached these games, how he coached them in these games, what our style of football was. And so the stats are there for me to try and show why I've been perhaps more positive than other people have been. The eye test, though, also tells me that we are conceding chances. at home especially. We have been a little less in control of games compared to last season. I don't know what I mean, but I feel like we're not basically pinned in teams' halves for most of the game. I felt last season we probably did that a little bit better from February onwards. But again, the question is boring. I don't think you can say that about Arsenal. That's my opinion.
Listen, challenging for a league title is far from boring.
Yeah.
And we've waited a long time to be doing it consistently, let alone winning it.
Mm-hmm.
So, forget the boring remarks for now. Let's just continue doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you said, there's nothing better than winning a Premier League title. But winning a Premier League title while boiling piss throughout the league, I mean, there's an argument there that it's a bit better doing it that way. So,
mate, I'll take any title, but if it comes in that fashion, I'll be very, very happy. Now, look, everyone, you've heard the stats, and you know what people have been saying out in the media. Are Arsenal boring? Is the style of play sustainable? What is it about Arteta's Arsenal? Are we trying to be more direct? Are we trying to, what is it? Are we relying on our defence too much? Well, the numbers would say something different, but I want to know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you make of Arsenal's style of play? Is it sustainable? Is Arteta finding ways to introduce different ways to win for Arsenal in games that require different things? I think away at the Etihad, you have to do something different to at home against Leicester, but it looks like Arteta is trying to master that ability to do different things. A big thanks to Turkish.
Love James.
Everyone go subscribe to Turkish LDN, which you will be anywhere, and of course check out the Big Six. You'll catch me here on AFTV and the Gooniverse, and if you want any more content here on AFTV, subscribe to the channel because we're keeping up to date with everything as it happens, all the breaking news, everything that's going on from injuries to transfers to whatever it might be. And then of course this weekend we're back for Bournemouth with starting 11 watch long and everything as well. Catch you all in a bit.